There is a type of fatigue that isn't from late work hours or sleeplessness. It is from living as another person. Day by day, you keep on donning the roles assigned to you by society, family, or the intangible laws of life itself. And then, the cracks start to appear. Not in a boom, but in a subtle quake that shakes everything. Abruptly, success tastes flat, love is empty, and a voice inside begins to speak, dissatisfied more and more by the day, that something is amiss. Carl Jung thought that each of us comes eventually to this inner crossroads. Go on following the script others have written for you, or take a path called individuation, the way of self-becoming at any price. But what really happens when you finally decide to choose yourself? Not just on a conscious level, but on a deep level within your unconscious. That is what we're going to dive into today in this video. From revealing the masks that hold you hostage, to the moment you exist as the very embodiment of your truth. You'll understand why choosing yourself doesn't just change your life, it rebuilds the world around you. Beware, however, this isn't a fairy tale. To choose yourself usually comes at a cost with loss and discomfort, and the confrontation with truths you've been avoiding for decades. But on the other hand, you'll find strength and freedom nothing else can provide. So let's start at the beginning with the first question: how have we not chosen ourselves? Here is a paradox of contemporary life. We all think we're living freely, but actually, we're living someone else's narrative. Like actors who are inserted into an already written play, we learn lines taught to us as children, act out the faces others want us to wear, and when the curtain descends, we have no idea who we are. Jung referred to this as the persona, the social facade that assists us in survival, but ultimately becomes our cell. Since childhood, we are taught to adapt ourselves in return for love and acceptance. If you were the obedient child who always pleased your parents, you would have known that love comes only when you do the right thing. If you suppressed your tears because boys don't cry or girls should be gentle, you learned to suppress your feelings. And every time you did, a little bit of your soul was chipped away, like a statue sculpted to match another person's definition of beauty. We leave childhood with an unspoken self-script. If I am good, I'll be loved. If I am pleasing, I'll be safe. And though safety is reassuring, your authentic self is smothered. You are a bird in a gilded cage, nourished, housed, and guarded, but never experiencing the smell of mountain breezes or the expanse of blue sky. Jung called the sides of ourselves that we reject the shadow. He didn't view it as an adversary to vanquish, but rather as the forsaken part of our existence, filled with our weaknesses and our own potential. But when we won't pick ourselves, the persona rules, and the shadow is pushed into the basement of the unconscious. And that basement never rests. The shadow does not vanish. It signals. It may come in the form of sudden unease at a party where all the pieces are perfectly in place. Other times, it is the hollow that follows a battle's, one triumph, or perhaps it is that nagging restlessness to alter things, despite the appearance of all being okay on the surface. Jung would describe these as communications from the self, your true nature, attempting to contact you via the shadow. The more you ignore them, the more they become loud and intense. Eventually, the abandoned child inside begins to smash things, not out of hate, just to be heard. Psychologically, this can manifest as depression, explosive moods, or reckless choices we call crises. But actually, they are pleas for attention. So take a minute. Don't skip ahead, look within. Can you remember the last time that secret part of you attempted to be heard? Did you hear it? Or did you quiet it with logical reasons? Tell the truth, because that knowing might be the very first step toward finding the self you've lost. Imagine this: you're standing in a brightly lit house, the world of the persona. Everything looks polished, perfectly arranged for guests. But beneath that house is a basement, and in that basement live your abandoned dreams, hidden emotions, and forgotten memories. They're not dead, they're waiting. They don't perish, they wait. Those forgotten pieces of you, hidden away in the basement of your unconscious mind, wait patiently for their time to resurface. And when that creaky basement door finally opens at last, set in motion by something you never even saw coming, they don't sneak in unseen. They come bursting in like a tempest, engulfing everything simultaneously. That is why people describe an inner awakening as not peace, but chaos. Because what was long repressed finally bursts into the light. But society instructs us to muffle these messages, not hear them. Tired, drink more coffee, alone, watch a movie, lost, work yourself to exhaustion. But the shadow doesn't go away because you turn your face from it. It gets stronger, and when you can no longer avoid it, it makes you confront it. That is when breaking points occur: the divorce, the job you abruptly leave, the life you leave behind. To others, it seems like an error. But in fact, it is your true self insisting to breathe once more. The actual danger of failing to choose yourself is that you will still think life is fine. It is like a loss of your sense of smell. You think the room is fresh until a window opens, and the stench pours in. Self-betrayal is the same. You don't even realize it until a breakup, a loss, or a crisis swings the basement door wide open, and the ignored parts of you shout to be heard. Reflect on the sensible decisions you've made. Choosing the secure job your parents were okay with over the one that you really cared about. Remaining in a relationship because everyone tells you you're ideal together. Waking up every morning to an enviable, well-paying job that feels like it is anchored to you like lead. This is what we call growing up. But more often than not, it is learning to betray ourselves in more respectable measures. Not picking yourself is like signing into another person's social media page. You can look around, read, even write status updates, but it is never yours. The pictures, the posts, the friends, they're all owned by somebody else, and however much you go along with it, you can't say it is your life. My close friend experienced, upon graduation, she took on a managerial position at her cousin's thriving restaurant. She reminded herself that she was doing well, good pay, dignified title, regular work. However, inwardly, she was living her cousin's life. The clients, the connections, the reputation, all these belonged to him, not to her. One night, when the final guest departed, she sat at the bar and scrolled through her phone, poised to post a proud of my work picture. But when she opened her gallery, she stopped. All the pictures were of other people, colleagues, clients, parties where she was merely a shadow at the back, in the stillness. She saw it in stark relief. She was doing it all, but nothing was hers. In Jungian psychology, this is what occurs when the persona gets the best of us. The ego clings so tightly to the image that it becomes completely forgetful of the inner self's very existence. We no longer make any distinction between the real me and the me acting on the stage. It is for this reason that so many individuals in midlife experience what we refer to as a crisis. It is not that they shift overnight. It is that the soul, after decades of silence, has no intention of remaining caged. And the price of not choosing yourself doesn't stop with you. It creeps into every relationship when you live dishonestly. Others love the cover that you wear, not you. And even if they adore you with all their hearts, you feel empty, because you know their love isn't for true. It is for the character you play. Here is the most frightening reality of all. If you spend your whole life not choosing yourself, you will die without ever having even met yourself. Not in some sort of amorphous, philosophical context. But actually, you'll go out of this world with a question left unanswerable. If I had lived my true life from the beginning, how would everything have been different? But first, you have to gain the ability to confess something hard. Until now, you might not have fully chosen yourself. Number 2, choosing yourself. It is not a one-time thing. It is a life-changing ritual. When you finally look into the basement and see that the shadow is alive, the toughest step isn't looking, It is deciding to open the door and enter. Most people believe that choosing themselves means changing jobs, ending a relationship, or embarking on a passion project. But Jung thought these are simply surface outcomes of something much more profound, a deep and fundamental transformation of the soul. Being chosen is not something akin to channel surfing on a TV remote control. It is something similar to moving out of a house one has been living in their whole life. Each wall, each window, each picture frame was constructed to provide security. Safety is no longer liberty anymore. To venture out is to invite storms, but it is the only means of experiencing an actual dawn. That is why individuation was like a ritual to Jung. In primitive cultures, all rituals of passage entailed leaving the group, going through ordeals, and returning transformed. Choosing yourself is the same. You have to leave the psychological village, the assumptions, the routines, the norms you've always depended on, and venture into the inner wilderness, where you and your authentic voice are all that are left. And in that wilderness, the shadow ceases to be your foe. It becomes a guide, revealing to you the secret places of yourself that you have shunned. Psychologically, this is a death of the old self. The ego struggles in desperation, holding on to the comforting narratives of who you believe yourself to be. It is like a snake molting. The previous layer protected you before, but now it is strangling your development. Shedding the old you never comes easy. It hurts, it is exposing, and makes you vulnerable without shedding it. However, you cannot evolve. Selecting yourself always means venturing into the unknown. Jung said once, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." That pain doesn't always happen because you lose friends, roles, or others' approval. That pain also happens when you release the version of you you've held on to for years. This is what many are so afraid of. They yearn to be free, but they're afraid their old self has to die. Picture a woman who has lived her entire life as the good daughter, the perfect wife, the sacrificing mother. She wakes up one morning drained, depleted, and knows that something needs to change. Initially, she starts choosing herself in tiny ways, taking up hobbies, saying no to constant requests. But the true makeover comes when she is willing to confront the shame of being selfish, when she refuses to buckle to the pressure of disappointing others' expectations. The moment she lets herself experience that shame without fleeing, the ritual has commenced. Because becoming yourself isn't one great choice, it is a series of everyday choices. Each time you find yourself at the crossroads of truth and convenience, of honesty with yourself and being liked by others, you are invited into the ritual once again. And each decision, no matter how minute, gets you closer to the self, the authentic center of who you are. Imagine your soul as an ancient temple shrouded in dense vines. Self-selecting is cutting them loose. In the beginning, only small shafts of light pass through. But the more you clear, the temple shows you its true beauty, still intact, still waiting. The outside alterations, a new career, a new relationship, a new way of living, are only superficial. Underneath them is the real transformation, an inner resurrection in which you are no longer moved by fear, because now you are being moved by truth. Jung made it plain. The intention of individuation is not to become a better person according to society. It is to become whole. Whole is light and shadow, reason and emotion, conscious and unconscious, all blended together into a living oneness. And the ritual of choosing yourself is the key to that wholeness. On a deeper level, this ritual is about reclaiming sovereignty over your soul. If the unconscious is a vast kingdom, then for years you've allowed others, family, culture, expectations, to set the laws, raise the fences, and plant a flag that wasn't yours. Choosing yourself means lowering that foreign flag and raising your own. It's declaring, from this moment on, this inner land belongs to me. Contemporary psychology refers to this as authoring one's life, being able to write your own script rather than picking up where others left off. Jung goes a step further. It is not about rewriting the script. It is about bringing in the authentic narrator, the self rather than the ego, the persona, or archetypes borrowed from others. And this is something subtle but essential. This ceremony doesn't only happen on the level of conscious thought. The unconscious communicates through images, not words. It speaks in symbols, metaphors, and dreams. Which is why, along the way, you may dream about running into a missing loved one, pushing your way through a foreign forest, or being led by a leading animal. These are not coincidental. They are the hidden rituals your psyche conducts to guide you step by step from the old ground to a new wholeness. From a mythological sense, choosing yourself is like the hero's journey. You depart the comfortable village, make your way through dark forests, battle monsters, survive trials, and finally return with a treasure. In this case, the treasure is your own true self. But Jung warns us this is not a fairy tale. It doesn't end well. Every phase of life beckons you to repeat the ritual. But deeper, you might first choose yourself by stepping away from a poisonous relationship. A few years later, you might choose yourself once again by resigning from a safe job that is stifling your creativity. And on the most fundamental level, you choose yourself not by responding out of fear, but by living in pure trust of your inner guidance. This journey is not a straight course. It is a spiral. Each turn brings you closer to your center. The further in, the more you understand that choosing yourself was never an act of defiance against the world. It is, in fact, a reunion with yourself, with your unconscious, with your light and your dark, with your spot in the collective soul. So as you stand at the door of this ritual, keep this in mind. You are not merely altering your life. You are altering the trajectory of your entire inner universe. And when your inner universe shifts, the outer universe will follow. If what I've shared so far awakens something within you, then stick around. Because the next parts of this journey will open even more windows into who you are in reality. Be sure to subscribe and mark this channel as saved, so when you are ready to take the next step, the way will be there for you. Number 3. Who are you when you are no longer who others want you to be? When the ritual of self-choice propels you across the threshold of the old life, you find yourself in uncharted ground. A huge unmapped emptiness, no directions, no spotlights, no cheers, no jeers. Only you, standing in front of one question that feels heavier than it looks. Who am I if I am not who they thought I would be? At first, this doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like disorientation. It's like removing a ring you've worn for years. The imprint still etched into your skin. You've worn it so long that without it, your hand feels unfamiliar. In the same way, shedding the persona doesn't instantly reveal your true self. Instead, it creates a gap between what has fallen away and what has yet to be born. Jung referred to this as the liminal space, a boundary in which the old world has broken up, but the new world is not yet formed. In a number of ancient rites of passage, this was the phase in which participants were de-stratified and denamed, existing in a state of uncertainty before being reborn as someone new. It is a transitional phase in psychology. It was a critical component of individuation for Jung. But here's the contradiction. The liminal space makes you exist in not knowing. And the ego resents this. The ego clings to the labels. I am a lawyer. I am the oldest child. I am an introvert. When those labels dissolve, the ego freaks out. It is like walking on a misty suspension bridge. You can't see what is next, and there is no return. This in-between tends to look like a breakdown. Ancient tales lose significance. Values and beliefs slide through your hands like a rope unwinding. Many grow anxious, disoriented, or want to return to the comfort of familiar habits. But this void has a secret function. It is a psychological womb, a space in which the new self is quietly taking shape, such as a seed planted in the dark, unknown to anyone. Change is already happening deep inside. This is the place where the shadow starts rising, with it all the forgotten dreams, hidden talents, and repressed aspects of yourself. And here you are, confronted with a decision. Will you hold on to the past form, or will you stay in the darkness long enough for the new form to take shape? Most of us hurry. We seize upon a new identity just to get away from the empty space. But Jung cautioned, if you don't linger in the empty space long enough, you won't encounter your authentic self. You'll merely trade one mask for another. Genuine strength at this phase isn't action, it is persistence. Persisting with the uncertainty, the unanswering questions, the awkward silence of being unfixed. And then something starts to change. Suddenly, without you even realizing it, you find yourself doing tiny seeds of your real self. You find yourself doing things not out of duty or role, but out of a simple inner urge. Jung phrased it like this: one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Enlightenment is not found in imagining a better version of yourself. It is found in embracing the light and the dark together inside of you. In that instant, you truly behold the parts you previously suppressed. The dreams deemed unrealistic, the passions described as childish, the feelings you'd previously hidden in shame. And here's the surprise. For the first time, you don't require permission to accept them. A man, previously a corporate leader, told how he found his painting passion after leaving his high-level job. Initially, he was foolish. Painting was babyish next to running a corporation. But each day, as he allowed himself to paint, a long-dormant spark re-emerged. A pleasure he hadn't experienced since childhood came back. This is the original self that Jung talked about. The part of you that was alive before the world, explained who you were supposed to be. The self that lived before the masks, before the roles, before the expectations. Leaving behind being what other people think you should be means leaving the familiarity of agreement. It is like taking off a mask that you've had on for so long. A mask sewn with other people's judgments and opinions. Initially, it can be bare, even lonely. But there is a difference between the hollowness of being untruthful and the loneliness of being truthful. One leeches life from you, the other gives you life in that still place. You can actually hear your own heartbeat, steady and distinct. Psychologically, this is a turning point. You start moving away from an ego directed outward, constantly looking for approval in others' eyes, to one that is inwardly based. The crowd is taught by silence. Rather than pursuing answers within the crowd, you begin finding them in your own depths. This does not isolate you. Instead, it lets you connect differently, not through role, not through performance, but through presence. And something truly amazing occurs when you finally cease living under the burdens of others' projections. You also cease binding others to yours. You release them from the prison of having to be who you thought they should be, even though they no longer fit the role you scripted in your head. That freedom in you radiates outward, like a gentle wind, freeing everyone vulnerable enough to perceive it. At this point, the question, "Who am I?" is not a puzzle requiring an absolute answer. Rather, it is a river you know how to swim in. There are days it is smooth, others bumpy, but you do not dread the current. You know the river is life, and you are supposed to flow with it. Carl Jung called this harmony, ego, and self-alignment, where you know that you are not just the rower, but the river itself. Being yourself doesn't always necessitate becoming a brilliant copy of yourself by societal acceptance. Oftentimes, it simply means being ordinary, yet completely yourself. And in a world fixated on appearances, that sort of authenticity is a subtle and rare bravery. Number 4, when you choose yourself, you touch the whole. Departing the liminal stage of change, you enter a paradoxical sense, smaller than ever, but vaster than ever. Smaller for you envision yourself as one single strand in the immense web of life. Vaster for you also know that within this one strand, the full web is mirrored. Jung referred to this integration with the self. It is the time the ego ceases to try to be the center of the universe, and will take its rightful place in the big picture. Selecting yourself in its truest sense has never been egotistical. It is rather an opening, a doorway to something larger than the self, to the creative well Jung referred to as the collective unconscious. When the persona has dropped and the shadow has been brought into alignment, your perspective expands. No longer held back by protective fences, you see from the center, where all aspects of you, light and dark, conscious and unconscious, communicate with each other. It is as though an instrument that has been out of tune for a long time suddenly finds its harmony. Each string no longer at odds, but singing in harmony. And when you strike your note, it no longer exists in isolation. It harmonizes with the whole orchestra of life. This is the paradox. Existing through the persona gives you a sense of belonging, but leaves you alone. But when you prioritize yourself, you might anticipate isolation and find instead the deepest connection, an authentic bond that goes beyond roles. It is the unspoken instant when two strangers exchange a smile over a stunning vista, or when you sit in silence with a person you love, but feel something words could never. Psychologically, contact with the self also equates to contact with the collective unconscious, the eternal field of archetypes, symbols, and myths. It is this that makes living your truth contagious and effortless. You become a living symbol, a silent catalyst who unwittingly encourages others to move into themselves. An inspiring story exemplifies this. A female from a seaside village in Vietnam spent 40 years cultivating rice paddies and bringing up grandchildren. When her children left home, her courtyard was vacant, a silence she had never experienced. She purchased some packets of seed once and planted them. Within the following season, her courtyard was filled with blossoms, visited by bees, butterflies, and children's giggles from the neighboring houses. Others soon requested seeds, and the entire village erupted in bloom. She earned no titles, no admiration. But each morning, watching people smile at the beauty her flowers brought, she knew she had quietly spun beauty into her community's tapestry. When you choose yourself, you automatically ripple out into the entirety. Old triggers no longer have a hold because you know your place. Anger doesn't derail you but becomes a bright signal for conscious action. Sadness doesn't drown you. It moves through, leaving quiet behind. This is what contemporary psychology terms self-transcendence. Abraham Maslow, who was famous for his hierarchy of needs, subsequently added a level above self-actualization, living not for yourself, but for something larger. Jung would concur, this is not about dissolving the ego, but permitting a healed ego to become one with the broader stream of life. Biologically, picture one cell knowing that it is part of the whole organism. When it prospers, the body succeeds. When it flails, the entire system fails. Choosing yourself is like keeping your cell in good health so that life itself can thrive. Even neuroscience captures this reality. Research indicates that during meditative, creative, or unconditional love states, the brain departs from its default mode and moves into more integrated networks. This produces a felt sense of oneness. It demonstrates that harmony between ego and whole isn't a theoretical concept. It is a lived biological truth. In this condition, each movement becomes symbolic. A word, a caress, a gesture resonates into the collective, such as when one tosses a stone into water and creates ripples that flow outward. You no longer try to change the world. The manner in which you live is already the change. Jung wrote once, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." When you've selected yourself and become one with the entirety, each interaction is a chance for transformation, yours as well as the others. You don't engage to take or sacrifice any longer, but from wholeness, where giving and receiving come as gracefully as air. When you choose yourself, something quietly but profoundly changes in how you navigate life. You no longer feel the incessant drive to rush past others, compare, or own more in order to be worthy, because you already know it within. Releasing the need to hold on to what is temporal frees up your hands to take in what is really yours. And as simply you discover releasing what has fulfilled its purpose. This sort of liberty can't be given by the endorsement of society or glitzy accomplishments. It is created by a congruence with your greatest truth. Perhaps the deepest insight into touching the whole is this: your own journey is never yours alone. Every authentic act has a collective significance. Your willingness to live honestly doesn't end with you. Its effects ripple outward. In healing yourself, you end the cycle of transferring old wounds to others. By exiting out of persona, you remind the world that all human beings have the right to be alive, and that wholeness is possible only when each person within it is alive to their own truth. Remember the time you experienced that deep sense of belonging. Even if only for a brief moment, cling to it, document it, mark it with a symbol, a note, or even a quiet memory. These reminders tie you to the reality that you've been here before, and you can come back at will. The culmination of this journey does not resemble a big finale. No fireworks, no clapping. Rather, it creeps quietly in, like the light of dawn spilling quietly into a dark room. It comes steadily, patiently, but once it finds you, it does not go away. This is when you come to grasp it at last. Freedom is not the lack of boundaries. It is having the freedom to live with the boundaries you deliberately decide on. From this point forward, every choice, every move becomes a simple yet strong affirmation. This is my way. You will find that others start to feel it as well. Your energy is no longer a show they are observing, but an open field in which they can breathe too, where they feel allowed to be themselves. So in doing that, choosing yourself is not just a self-focused act. It becomes a vibrationally powerful call for others to return to their own authenticity. And here is the lovely thing. Integration does not reside in melodramatic moments. It seeps into the smallest things of daily existence. The soft smile over tea, the delight in observing the laughter of a child, the serenity in a peaceful stroll along a known street. In the end, you see that this process, acknowledging when you weren't choosing yourself, being brave enough to enter into the silence, and ultimately becoming one with the whole, wasn't ever about becoming anybody different. It was about discovering the self that was always waiting for your return. And when you return, you don't find yourself. You realize that the whole world has been contained within your very breath the whole time.